Welcome back to the Rock Room and another episode of the Rock Your Divorce podcast, where we help men successfully navigate the divorce process in a healthy way. I'm your host, Stephen Valente. If you're like me, you may feel stuck in the cycle of negativity. You may be finding it hard to find any joy in your life whatsoever. You don't believe that you'll ever heal and be able to move forward to find peace in your life. And you may feel like there's nothing in your life to even be thankful for. If that sounds like you, then you are absolutely in the right place. Because in today's episode, we're going to talk about what practicing gratitude can do for you, both during and after the divorce process, and how to use it to your advantage. If that sounds like something you're interested in, then plug in, turn it up, and let's hit the stage. As we talk about on this podcast, there are 7 key areas of your life that if you just focus on them each and every day, you will not only be able to navigate this divorce process in a healthy way, but you will absolutely be able to thrive afterwards. And the visual that I always provide is that of a 7-channel mixing board, where each of those channels represents one of the key areas of your life, and the faders within those channels represents the time and the effort and the energy and focus that you need to give to each of those each and every day. Now, as I always say, it's virtually impossible, especially through this divorce process, to equally balance each and every one of those channels, each and every one of those key areas of your life while this divorce process is going on. However, if you just make a concerted effort and work with a couple key components underneath each, you will absolutely be able to navigate it and thrive afterward. So today's episode, we're going to focus on, even though this topic can cover the first 3 faders, which is spiritual, mental, and emotional, we're going to really focus this on the second fader, the mental portion of your life, your mental health. And in today's episode, we're going to discuss practicing gratitude. Okay. So when I look at my experience through the divorce process, like I said, it was about a 15-month process. There was about 2 years leading up to the point at which I filed for divorce. But when I look at that, there were some mistakes that I feel like I made very early on. And for those of you, the 70 to 80% of you that didn't see the divorce coming, or you knew that you were unhappy, or you knew that she was unhappy, you knew that the marriage was kind of in turmoil or had been, not as good as what you had hoped or what you had planned on happening, you didn't see this coming, right? You didn't see that divorce was even an option. So when you are served with those papers, or you are told that this divorce process is happening, right? The marriage ultimately, in essence, was over when she filed for divorce for you. There was a shock, right? There was a shock. And there was a flood of emotions that you most likely did not expect and could not handle. Or if you're in this process right now, you're finding it very hard to handle. And again, it's not as if you were being naive to think that everything was fine or that things would just work themselves out. But the sheer shock of your soon-to-be former spouse or former spouse serving you with those divorce papers, making it official, and in essence saying the marriage is done, right? We just have this now legal process through the state to finalize what in her mind and in her emotions is already done, okay? And when those feelings hit you, this flood of emotions hit you, a lot of the feelings that, I know I felt, feelings that I'm seeing through men that I've coached or I'm coaching now. The first one is kind of that shock, right? I mean, it's now all of a sudden everything that you had expected or planned is no longer. And it's not necessarily just the loss of the marriage as it stands today, but it's the loss of the marriage and the family from your history, right? Because all of that is going away. And probably more importantly, the future. Everything that you were working toward, everything that you were planning, everything that you were striving and driving to is no longer. So, you have that shock, and the sense of negativity that falls upon you as a man starts that process. And we're going to go through subsequent episodes on, as I said before, the stages of grief and dealing with each of those stages, what to expect, kind of what you're going through, how you can get through it, with the help of course, a therapist and some other things that you could be doing each and every day. But that negativity really starts to drive kind of a bitterness and a skepticism across not only people that you encounter, but friends and family and the world around you, right? And it's really hard not to have that bitterness and skepticism creep into everything that you do. And with that, you kind of begin to feel this loss of identity. You may feel a loss of purpose, right? And it's all surrounded, in this bubble of negativity, right? Because you didn't expect it to end in the manner that it's ending, and you feel like you're losing control or have lost control now of your life and the process of your life. And as men, as I've said before, we revert back to kind of our lowest common denominator, which is we look to everything as it's the worst case scenario, right? So when we start feeling those feelings of loss of identity and negativity, and that we've lost our purpose in life because now our wife and, in essence, our family, our children are going away. And then you throw on top of that the pressures and stresses of everything that that you're going to have to cover, from the financial obligations and the time obligations. It can be completely overwhelming, and at times it can be crippling. So you feel those types of feelings. The mistakes that we also make is that we take on this pain that we're now starting to feel, like this rush of emotions that hit us, that now all of a sudden we have this overwhelming sense of pain and grief, and we don't know what to do with it. Now, by default, men, we suppress it, right? And, we try to push it away, and that is not good anyway. But the opposite of that suppression is even worse, which is lashing out, right? And we've talked about it in previous episodes, and of course we're going to hit some of these topics later on as the seasons move forward. But this is where men make the mistake of falling into some very unhealthy and very destructive habits, right? And I'm not just talking about addictions, whether that's alcohol or drugs or prescription drugs, or I'm not talking about, behaviors, reckless behaviors and everything like that we've talked about, although those are a large portion of the mistakes that men make. I'm also talking about kind of, that internal, right? When I talk about suppressing it and the mistakes that we make internally, that's when we start to go into situations where the isolation or the forced aloneness, or we start to feel as if we're being ostracized, or we're being looked at by society as a failure. Or that we couldn't hold our family together, or if you were one of those that in essence caused the divorce, maybe by behaviors or maybe by life choices that you make, then you're also feeling this overwhelming sense of guilt, whether you externalize it or not. You're feeling that guilt, and that's only leading to those feelings, those negative feelings, or the feelings that you need to self-isolate, or that you need to, have these numbing, things to numb your emotions, whether that's alcohol, whether that's prescription drugs or illegal drugs, or whether it's reckless behaviors and all the things that we've mentioned here on the podcast before. So, I think those feelings, those overwhelming feelings and the mistakes that men continue to make during that, when all of these feelings are flooding in, you don't know how to deal with them in a healthy way, that also has a physical impact on our lives as well. And you may not necessarily immediately think that, all of a sudden, it's going to cause some physical issues with me. But it absolutely does, and in fact, the statistics out there that show that you have these mental and emotional feelings that you're not dealing with in a healthy way. You don't have healthy coping mechanisms to deal with this, and it will ultimately affect your body physically. And I've done an episode related to things like stress or anxiety and how that impacts the body, and how you can throw yourself into some very unhealthy physical ailments, whether it's blood pressure, whether it's like there's all these things that you have to deal with, that the mental and emotional side of going through divorce will impact you physically. So you have to watch out for that. But I think ultimately, having these emotions, having these feelings, having all of this rush and flood, the mistake that we make as men is we believe that we're always going to be in this place, right? And it's very hard. I almost feel like to say it's impossible to think that, when you're living day to day. And again, I'm not talking about what we are going to talk about in a few minutes is this gratitude practice and what it means, kind of along the lines of the mindful, building a daily mindfulness practice and doing that type of thing. But this is living in a day-to-day moment where we feel like it's never going to end. We feel these feelings, these negative feelings, these feelings of grief and loss and hurt and anger and all of this that's inside of us, and we either suppress it or lash out, but we feel like our life is never going to get out of that place. The example that I used in a previous episode was the movie Groundhog Day, and where you just keep reliving the same day over and over and over again, and you never seem to get past that moment, right? That you think that everything that's going on during this divorce process, and for those of you that it's taken a long time, like I said, mine was 15 months, it does feel like eternity. It does feel like Groundhog Day. It does feel like you're never going to get out of that process. But I always want to encourage you that this is just a short season of your life. The feelings that you're feeling now, the uncertainty, the fear, the doubt, the anxiety, you may be feeling feelings of guilt or depression, the shame and embarrassment that you feel when you walk out the door, that everybody knows your business, or that the world is looking at you differently because now you've quote unquote lost as a man. You've lost your family, you've lost your wife, things are falling apart for you. All of those feelings are just short term. And as I stress on this podcast, by focusing on those 7 key areas of your life, by taking control and becoming the man that that God has intended you to be, the man that you want to be when this divorce process is done. If you just make the time to do this each and every day, I promise you that when this short season is done, you will absolutely thrive as the rock star that God has intended you to be. So let's talk about why the practice of gratitude matters and how we can implement that into our daily life, just like a rock star. So you may be asking yourself, what does he mean by having a practice of gratitude? Or what is gratitude anyway, right? So I want you to think of it this way. Having a practice of gratitude means that you're recognizing all the wonderful, positive things that you have in your life right now, whether they're big or they're small, it doesn't matter, right? And it's coming at life from a perspective of not what you're lacking, but what you already have in your life. And that's really, really difficult sometimes for men, right? Because, we are programmed to, yes, we are in the present, and yes, we have what we have, and we're doing what we're doing, but we're always striving for more. We're always trying to get better, doing more, achieving more, whether that's in our careers, whether that's, how much we're making, so we always have this mindset of looking beyond the present moment. And as we've talked about in the past, about mindfulness and being in the present moment and, trying to enjoy that, gratitude has a lot to do with that, because gratitude is a mindset, right? This is where, when we talk about the second fader and how the mental portion of your life, next to your spiritual life, having faith first, the ability for you to succeed in the mental portion of this divorce process and after it's done is critical, because you don't want your emotions to lead you, and you have to, as a man, be able to control your mind. You have to be able to be in that control, that when thoughts of negativity or hopelessness, or, when your mind, as I say in this podcast, when it starts to circle the drain, right, and you're laying awake at night and you feel like all is lost and you don't know how you're going to get out of it, this is where you as a man have to step up and step in to your mindset and change that mindset. And one of the ways that you can do that very quickly is to go to a place of gratitude. And this is not about pretending that the negative things aren't in your life. This is not pretending or suppressing the emotions that you're having or the emotions that you're feeling. This is not about faking it until you make it, right? This is really about taking those feelings, and we have a whole episode on meditation, right? So when those feelings come into your mind, being able to accept them, without judgment, and handle them, and then let them go. And one of the easiest ways to do that is to be grateful and thankful. And what I found is, by implementing this process of gratitude, it was truly a game changer for me, right? It was a total and complete mindset that took practice, and we're going to talk about practice and all that here in a minute. But I found it impossible for me to be in a negative, destructive mindset internally and be thankful and grateful at the same time. It was almost impossible, if not impossible, for me to do that. So, as I began to have those feelings, have those thoughts that are leading me to a path of negativity, that are bringing, these negative feelings, whether it's stress or anxiety or guilt or depression, or sometimes, as we talked about, with shame and embarrassment about what's going on, or the loneliness, the aloneness, the uncertainty that life is bringing you each and every day during this divorce process. If you are mentally strong and can immediately recognize what's happening and put yourself into that position of gratitude to remind yourself of all the wonderful things that you have in your life, it's virtually impossible to stay in that negative mindset. And as I make correlations here on the podcast about how music and everything, I want you to think a little bit about you as the instrument. I've made this comment a couple times in other episodes where you have to look at yourself as an instrument, right? Your mind is an instrument, and you have to tune that instrument. You have to retune that instrument. You have to make sure that instrument is taken care of for it to perform at the highest level that it was created to perform with or at. And you're no different, and your mind is no different. And again, as a man, you should be able to step in and step up when you begin to feel yourself go to those negative places, go to those negative thoughts, and immediately step in and take control and say, you know what? Yes, I could feel this way, but look at all the other things that I have in my life that are positive. So this is really about recognizing, implementing that daily mindfulness practice, having that practice of gratitude become your default as you do this. And this is really about intention, right? It's taking an intentional shift in your focus. It's making the decision that you're not going to be stuck over here, but rather it's much more healthy for you, and it's much more productive for you to be in this positive state. And that, like I said, it takes practice. So whether you are the instrument or you're learning to play an instrument, it's all about daily practice. It's all about daily repetition. And I'm encouraging you to then choose to look at your life through a different lens, right? Not the glass is half empty, not that the negative and bitter and skeptical that the divorce process brings men to, but rather choose a positive way, have that strength, have that mental fortitude, choose to implement this daily mindfulness practice and be thankful and grateful for that. It is a intentional shift of your focus that's going to bring that practice of having gratitude in your life. And, from the spiritual side, this is really about also reflection, right? Because, God has given you grace and mercy and love. And some of the things that I know that I fell into when it came to being in this negative place or thinking that the world was against me, or, all the struggles that I was facing, not only during that process, but even early after the process was finally over, is I had to reflect that there were a lot of things that I was unaware of, that I was protected from, that my children were protected from. And each and every day as you go along, and we're going to talk a little bit about how you're going to do this here in a few minutes, but you have to think about not only, what you know, but what you don't know. And you have to be thankful for those things that haven't happened to you or that you haven't seen happen in your life. And that's really about, God's grace and his mercy and his love for you and that protection that he's giving you. So the last thing I'll say, or the last couple things I'll say about this before we move on to the how, because it's very important on the how, is really going to the control what you can control, right? And I've talked about this a little bit in previous episodes where we as men try to control every situation, especially when we're in these negative situations or we feel like we've been backed in a corner or that our life and our future is at risk, right? The initial is to step in and try to control everything. And number one, it doesn't work, right? Because there's so many things you can't control during this divorce process. But as a man, if you choose to look at these 7 key areas of your life and you focus on those things that you can control, that you do have control over, and that are healthy and that, our habits and routines and mindsets and practices where you can bring that positivity, that healthy navigation of the process into your life, ultimately by getting really good at those during this process. When you do exit the process, and you will exit the process, you will be ready to thrive in life after. So control what you can control, and leave the rest to God in the process, right? And lastly, what I'll say is, this is all about being humbly grateful and thankful for the life that you live, right? The man that you are and the man that you are becoming when you choose to focus on those 7 key areas. But think about all the wonderful things that you have in your life. Your children, your career, your family, the hobbies that you have. Because what I'll also say is, when this process is done, if you have done this correctly, if you followed the 7 key areas of your life, the processes that we talk about here on the Rock Your Divorce podcast have been implemented, you will be the man that not only God has intended you to be and that you want to be for yourself, but then you will be ready to take on the life that you have always wanted for yourself or for your children, or you have become the better man to be able to now thrive in the life that you have remaining here on earth. And that is just an absolutely and wonderful feeling to be a part of, because you are in control of that. This blank canvas that you've been given once this divorce process is done is really up to you, right? And you have that ability, and you should be humbly grateful and humbly thankful for that opportunity if you've navigated it in a healthy way. So let's discuss the top 3 things that you can do to practice gratitude in your life daily. So the first way that you're going to implement gratitude is in your thoughts. And this starts with your daily prayer. Whether you pray in the morning or you pray throughout the day or just in the evening, it's really important to integrate that gratitude into your personal conversation with God. Be very humble and be very grateful of all the wonderful things that you have in your life and the wonderful things that God is doing for you each and every day. The second thing that you want to do in your thoughts is really pause throughout the day to acknowledge all the wonderful and beautiful things that you have in your life. Now, whether that's, pausing for a minute when you have your first sip of coffee for the day, or you see a sunset, or you see a sunrise, or, time with your kids. When you're mindfully present, this is where I want you to take just a moment to remind yourself how amazingly grateful and thankful that you need to be in your life. And this is really about reframing the negativity into positivity. This is about being mindful and present in the moment, so that when you feel those negative feelings coming, when you can sense those negative thoughts that are hitting you, this is where you have to reprogram your mind to immediately, instead of taking in that negative thought or taking in that negative feeling, this is where you stop, you acknowledge that you're having that, but then you reframe it into something positive. You remind yourself through gratitude how much you truly have, how blessed you truly are. And the more that you do that, not unlike playing an instrument or not like, songwriting or playing in the band, the more that you practice, the better that you're going to get at it. And I promise you, it's definitely going to make a difference in your life. The second thing that you're going to do is you're going to implement gratitude in your words, okay? Never miss an opportunity to let someone know how grateful you are for them, how thankful that you are for them in your life, what they do for you, what they mean to you. So there have been occasions, especially the last few years, where somebody will pop into my head, right? A friend, a family member, a coworker, whatever it is. And I feel like that is a a message to me to reach out to that person, right? Or if there's been somebody that's been doing something for you, or they thought of you, or they've helped you along the way, this is really the opportunity to continue to remind not only yourself how thankful and grateful and how blessed you are with amazing friends or family or coworkers or whatever it is, but by communicating gratitude for those people, to those people, it's going to make a difference in their life too. And it's going to let them know how much you love and care and appreciate who they are and what they do for you in your life. So never miss that opportunity to show gratitude through your words. And the last thing that you're going to do is you're going to implement gratitude in your life through your actions, okay? And, I really encourage you to take those 7 key areas of your life and think about those things each and every day that you're humbly grateful and thankful for under each of those 7 key characteristics. I also think that by an actionable step, which is gratitude journaling or somehow incorporating your gratitude into your journaling practice each and every day, that is a practice that you can remind yourself, not only through your thoughts, but through your actions and writing. And it doesn't have to be a lot, just maybe a couple, 2, 3 quick things that remind you each and every day of how blessed you are and how much you should be thankful for, even in the most deepest, darkest times of this divorce process. Again, it's reframing your mind. And it's getting to a place from negativity to positivity, but also really, truly being thankful and grateful for what you have. And the last thing that I think, just to remind you, all of this gratitude, this practice of gratitude, it's going to take time. It's going to take effort to reprogram your mind, right? This is a completely intentional reprogramming of your mindset. So, don't set yourself up for failure by thinking if you can't do it the first couple days or even week or two, that you're failing at it, right? This is just like going to the gym and building muscle. This is just like reframing your mind with your daily mindfulness practice or any type of healthy habit that we talk about here on the Rock Your Divorce podcast. So give yourself some grace and know that this is a slow process. But once you implement that process throughout the divorce process, you will absolutely find yourself on the other side, and it will just be a regular habit. So that's how you're going to implement gratitude into your daily life. If I've said anything today that's either struck a chord with you or resonated with you and you'd like to find out a little bit more information about it, I urge you to go to www.rockyourdivorce.com. While you're there, feel free to schedule a 30-minute phone call with me because I know that I can help you not only navigate this divorce process, but emerge and thrive like a rock star afterwards. While you're there, please like and subscribe to the Rock Your Divorce podcast. And if you know a man who's either early on in his divorce process or maybe he's currently going through it, or if he's recently been divorced but just quite yet hasn't healed and isn't thriving like he should, I ask that you share the Rock Your Divorce podcast with him. Bring him here to the Rock Room so that we can help him. That's it for today's episode. I look forward to seeing you here again in the Rock Room for another episode of the Rock Your Divorce podcast.